because honestly, everything else in this video hangs off it. It's the standard architecture across a lot of the top firms, and once you understand it, the rest of my job will make a lot more sense. It's not a new idea, it goes back a few decades, and there's one book I'd point any new hire to before anything else, Active Portfolio Management by Richard Grinold and Ronald Kahn. I'll link it in the description. What I want to do here is lay out the whole machine end to end, the way I'd sketch it on a whiteboard for someone on their first week. Then, for the rest of the video, we'll zoom into the individual pieces I actually worked on and expand them. One thing to set expectations on first, the multi-factor system at my firm, like at basically every firm, is an enormous code base. Nobody who joins today understands the entire thing end to end, and I'd argue nobody understands all of it at all. So think of this section as the map I wish someone had drawn for me on day one. Let me start with the single idea the whole business rests on. We get paid to outperform a benchmark. A client could just buy the index for almost nothing, so our entire reason to exist is the value we add on top of that index. That value add has a name, alpha, the cleanest way to think about it. If your benchmark is up 10% and you're up 12, that extra 2% that came from you, not from the market rising, is your alpha. Everything we build is in service of producing more of it. And here's the mindset shift that trips up most people coming from a pure engineering background, like I did. The market price already has a consensus view baked into it. Thousands of smart people have already priced in what they collectively think a stock is worth. So our job isn't to figure out what a stock is worth in some absolute sense. It's to find the specific spots where we disagree with the consensus, and to be right about that disagreement more often than the other people trying to do the exact same thing. Active management is forecasting the market's errors. So how do you forecast in a disciplined, repeatable way? You start by realizing that a stock's move on any given day isn't one thing. It's a stack of things added together. Picture an oil producer that's up 14% over some period. A chunk of that is just the whole equity market going up. Another chunk is its country. Another chunk is its industry. Oil moved, so oil stocks moved with it. And only what's left after you strip all of that out is truly specific to that company. That leftover piece is the part you actually have a view on. The way we separate those pieces in practice is regression. You regress the stock's return against the things that drive it, and whatever they explain is factor return, while the unexplained residual is the stock's own idiosyncratic return, and a quick gut check that surprises people. Even for an oil stock that tracks oil tightly, that company-specific residual is usually a big part of its total movement. Stocks are a lot more individual than they look. That idea, decomposing returns into common drivers plus a specific piece, is the seed of the whole model, so let me walk the pipeline it grows into. It all starts with data and signals. Everything downstream is only as good as the data feeding it. So this is where it begins. Both traditional financial data and the alternative data I'll get into later. Out of that data, you build signals, individual, measurable views on a stock. Classic ones are value, momentum, size, quality. The more exotic ones come out of alternative data sets. One thing worth flagging early. Before any of this, you also have to define your universe, the set of names you're even willing to trade. Your instinct is to trade everything for maximum breadth, but you quickly learn some names just aren't worth it. Illiquid stuff you can't get in and out of without moving the price against yourself. So you draw a sensible boundary first. A raw signal, though, isn't something you can trade directly, and turning it into something tradable is the next block, the alpha. An alpha is a clean, refined forecast of return. The intuition for the refinement is three things multiplied together: how volatile the stock is, how much genuine predictive skill your signal actually has, and how strongly the signal is firing for that specific name right now. Each refined signal becomes one factor, and multi-factor just means you're running many of these at once, each one ideally capturing a different, independent edge. We'll come back later to why independence matters so much, because it's the whole game. Running right alongside the alphas, not after them, in parallel, is the risk model, and this is the block newcomers consistently underrate. The alpha tells you what you hope to make. The risk model tells you what it could cost you in volatility. It uses that same decomposition from before. A stock's return is its exposure to a set of common factors, industries, plus risk indices like size, value, volatility, momentum, plus its own specific piece. Now, why go to all this trouble instead of just measuring how every stock moves with every other stock directly? This is the single best why I can give you, so let me actually work it through. To understand a portfolio's risk, you need the covariance between every pair of stocks, how each one co-moves with each other one. Take a universe of 1,400 names. The number of pairwise relationships you'd have to estimate is on the order of 980,000. That's hopeless. You can't estimate a million numbers reliably from finite history. You'd mostly be fitting noise. So here's the trick that makes the whole thing possible. Instead of stock to stock, you say every stock is just a bundle of exposures to maybe 65 common factors. Now you only need the covariances among the factors, which is around 2,000 numbers instead of nearly a million. You've collapsed an impossible problem into a tractable one. That is why the risk model is built on factors rather than raw stocks. It's the only way the math is even computable. While I'm on risk, two pieces of intuition I lean on constantly. First, risk does not add up the way you'd expect. The risk of a portfolio is less than the weighted average of its parts because the stocks don't all move together. That gap is exactly the benefit of diversification, spread across enough uncorrelated names, and the specific risk averages away toward nothing. But, and this is the catch, it only averages away the specific part. Stocks all tend to rise and fall with the market together, and that shared market risk never diversifies away, no matter how many names you hold. That's the line between specific risk, which you can dilute, and systematic risk, which you're always carrying. It's the core insight behind KPM. The market won't pay you a premium for risk you could have diversified away for free. Arbitrage pricing theory took that one step further and said, there isn't just one systematic driver, but many, which is precisely the multi-factor view we run on. The second piece of intuition is about time. Risk doesn't add across time, but variance does, as long as today's return isn't correlated with yesterday's, which for most assets, it basically isn't. So variance piles up linearly with time, and since risk is the square root of variance, risk grows with the square root of time. That's why, when you turn a monthly volatility number into an annual one, you multiply by the square root of 12, not by 12. Tiny detail, but it's everywhere, and getting it wrong quietly corrupts every risk number you produce. Once you've got both halves, the alphas saying what you expect to make, and the risk model saying what it'll cost, they feed into portfolio construction. This is an optimizer, and conceptually, it's doing a balancing act. Maximize expected return, subtract a penalty for the risk you're taking, subtract the cost of trading, all while respecting your constraints, position limits, staying sector neutral, turnover caps, how much leverage you're allowed. What comes out the other side is the target portfolio, the actual number of each name you want to hold. The optimizer just hands you a target, though actually getting there is the next block, implementation and trading. The whole philosophy of this stage fits in one line. Subtract as little value as possible. Every trade leaks a bit of your alpha back out, and this is death by 1,000 cuts. So it's worth knowing what those costs are. There's commission, the per share fee to the broker. There's the bid-ask spread, buy at the ask, sell at the bid, and that gap is the cost of a round trip. There's market impact, the big, sneaky one. Buying one share is cheap, but buying 100,000 shares pushes the price against you as you go. I always describe market impact as the finance version of the Heisenberg principle. You can't observe the market without disturbing it. And finally, there's opportunity cost, the trade you waited on for a better price that just ran away from you. The way you measure all of this after the fact is implementation shortfall. You run a hypothetical paper portfolio with zero trading costs and compare it to your real one. And the gap is your total cost of implementation. The last block closes the loop, performance analysis. After the fact, you take what actually happened and decompose it. How much came from the factor bets you intended to make? How much from constraints? How much was just noise? The real goal is to separate skill from luck and to find where the skill actually lives, so you double down on what's working. This block feeds straight back to research because factors decay. An edge that printed money 5 years ago gets crowded out as everyone else discovers it. You're never done. You're always refurbishing old factors and hunting new ones. 2 numbers tie the entire machine together, and I want you to internalize both. The first is the information ratio, your active return divided by your active risk. It's the report card. How much value are you adding per unit of risk you choose to take? The second genuinely changed how I think. The fundamental law of active management. Your information ratio is roughly your skill, multiplied by the square root of your breadth, where breadth is the number of independent bets you make. So there are exactly 2 ways to get better. Be more skillful per bet, or make more independent bets. Now, that word independent is doing enormous work. If you're long 5 stocks and short 5, but all the longs are retail and all the shorts are energy, you don't have 10 bets. You have 2. A bet on retail and a bet against energy. Real breadth means genuinely distinct decisions across both the names you cover and how often you independently revisit them. And once that clicks, the entire point of a multi-factor model snaps into focus. It's a breadth machine. It's how you make thousands of small, independent, slightly better than even bets across the whole market every single day. And the square root tells you that stacking up breadth is how a modest per bet skill compounds into a serious edge. That's the skeleton. Everything else I show you from here hangs off one of these blocks.